Hello. 7 Cents Consulting provides enlightened solutions. In this short video, we'll explain when incremental funding is an appropriate way to fund a contract. What is the definition of incremental funding and when is it appropriate to use? Ordinarily, a contract, including a modification such as an option exercise, must be fully funded at the point of award. That is, the amount of funds obligated in the award document ordinarily match the stated full performance value of the requirement. This is necessary to comply with an appropriation law referred to as the Recording Act and helps to avoid violations of the Anti-Deficiency Act. However, a frequently authorized exception to these full funding requirements is called incremental funding. Incremental funding means the funding of an awarded contract or an exercise option at a value less than the stated cost price for the full performance of the requirement, with specific contract provisions recognizing that additional funds must be provided later for performance of the complete requirement. An incrementally funded contract is one in which the total work effort is planned from the outset to be funded in multiple amounts. Funding schedules may be aligned to cover discernible phases of the work or may be based on time increments. Since full funding versus incremental funding of any contract action is an appropriation law matter, the underlying nature of the specific requirement does affect the agency's ability to incrementally fund. The nature of the business requirement, the contract type, does not make a difference unless the government agency imposes its own restrictions. The Government Accountability Office, GAO, has ruled that incrementally funding any requirement depends on whether the underlying requirement consists of severable services or the requirement is for non-severable services or supplies, which include software and software licenses. Severable services are characterized as continuing and reoccurring in nature. For example, help desk support, maintenance services, janitorial services, security services, etc. Severable services can be separated into components that provide benefit each time the service is provided. The Federal Acquisition Streamlining Act of 1994, commonly referred to as FASA, provides the legal authority for contracting officers to enter into a contract for the procurement of severable services for a period that begins in one fiscal year and ends in the next fiscal year, provided that the contract performance period does not exceed 12 months. Primarily as a result of this provision, severable service requirements can generally be incrementally funded, particularly when the performance period crosses between 2 fiscal years. Non-severable services means work that results in a final product or end product and for which benefit is received only when the entire project is complete, such as systems design, building conversion, or environmental study. GAO requires that contracts for non-severable services or for supplies can only be incrementally funded if the agency appropriation allows for incremental funding. However, it's also recognized that continuing resolutions, which are appropriations laws, generally do allow for incremental funding of any requirement. Therefore, non-severable services and supplies can often be incrementally funded under a continuing resolution. Once the full year appropriation is enacted, these requirements should promptly be fully funded. Therefore, a contract may be incrementally funded if all of the following are true. 1, the contract is a bona fide need of the period when the initial obligation is made. 2, incremental funding of the action is not prohibited for the appropriation being used or by agency financial management or acquisition regulations. 3, the underlying requirement is severable services, or the appropriation specifically allows for incremental funding of the specific requirement type. 4, all other acquisition regulations are complied with. 5, the contract contains a provision that includes a clause, a FAR clause, agency FAR supplement, or uniquely developed contract clause that A, limits the government's financial liability to the amount of the funds obligated. B, provides that only the contracting officer can allow for any increase in the government's financial liability and that any such increase must be in writing. C, projects the government's plan or schedule for providing future funding increments. D, requires timely contractor notice if and when funds obligated will be exhausted. And E, recognizes that the contractor is not required to perform if and when funds are exhausted. Contractor Performance Intelligence. Seven Sons Consulting is launching our Contractor Performance Intelligence product to help agencies manage your contracts from post-award to closeout. To request a demo of Contractor Performance Intelligence, send an email to demo@sevencentsconsulting.com or go to our products page on our website at sevencentsconsulting.com. Seven Sense Consulting provides enlightened solutions that deliver lasting value.